Hello and welcome back. In this first session, we're going to talk about what IO psychology is. So IO psychology is a specialized applied area of psychology. Specifically, it is the study of behavior, cognitions, and emotions as they apply to work and the workplace. So why would we be interested in studying work? There are some important aspects. One, work occupies a very large amount of our time. If you just think about a 40-hour per week job, 23% of our total time is spent working. If we consider that we sleep on average about 7 hours a night, then this increases to 33.6%. So 33.6% of our waking hours are spent on work if we're working a full-time job. This is a significant aspect of our lives, and therefore it also becomes a part of our self-identity. How we think of our professional and job lives impacts how we think of ourselves generally. So for example, someone who is an artist, they aren't just an artist in their job, they are an artist overall. And someone who may work at a bank may think of themselves as someone who works in the financial field. So it's a part of who they are. There are many areas of general psychology that apply to the workplace. And if we just look at some of these, cognitive psychology can be applied to the workplace in terms of our memory, how we learn, how we are learning within training situations, or how we just remember things throughout the day. We also have cognitions related to events that happen at work. So you hear that something happened at work and you make assumptions about that. You have ideas, schemas about how things should be, how situations should go. We also have measurement of mental and physical abilities, skills, and knowledge. So when we're trying to select employees, it's important to have some way of assessing what knowledge someone has for a particular job or what skills they may have that will apply to the job. Somehow we need to measure these, and all the aspects of measurement will be important in understanding how well each selection instrument will apply to the job performance once someone is in the job. Social psychology has a large place within industrial organizational psychology. Many aspects of groups, attitudes, work behavior, leadership, and motivation are coming out of basic social psychology and applied to the workplace. Although it's not commonly applied in an explicit way, developmental changes can also affect work. We can think about the changes we might have in values throughout the different life stages that we have. We also have different physical abilities at different times in our life. We may decline at some point in our physical ability, and this will have an impact on our work and our work environment. And motivational processes in terms of what kind of choices we make, how much effort we give to work tasks, and how long we persist at working at particular tasks. If we think about the employment process, we can see there are various aspects here, from bringing people in as applicants and selecting them, through training, being on the job, and then at some point, employees do leave the job. And we might be interested in those reasons for people leaving, whether it's retirement, whether it's that they are not satisfied with what's available to them in the current job, or whether there might be alternatives that come up that make them leave. So throughout this whole process, we will look at how psychology and how our understanding of human behavior can apply to the workplace. Now, generally, we divide up industrial organizational topics into what are considered industrial topics and organizational topics. Industrial topics include that first half of the employment process, from bringing potential applicants in to training them. And this includes things such as selection, in that is also recruitment of employees, training employees, and making other human resources decisions such as promotions and incentives. Organizational psychology refers to a lot of the behaviors that happen once someone is in an organization. Group behavior, leadership, work attitudes, motivation. These are just some of the behaviors we have to deal with once people are in the organization. So one thing that makes IO psychologists stand out beyond just the typical management consultant would be the scientist practitioner model that we base the field on. And what that means is that there's a scientific aspect to the way we go about doing our work. It's empirical, it's based on data, and we search for the reasons why. So when we know there's a relationship between two things, certain potential applicants make good employees, or certain situations lead to smooth teamwork, we want to know why that is. And we search for those answers and collect data, do studies to find out why and to truly understand. But there's also the practitioner piece of this, and that's that we are interested in real life issues that are happening within the workplace. We might be interested in changing policy to make the work situation better. We might be interested in improving organizational effectiveness. And we might be interested in worker well-being specifically. So I'll say that some organizational psychologists come more from the management perspective of trying to improve the effectiveness of the organization, make it more efficient, make it more lucrative. And some others come from the worker side of being interested in making the employment experience better and making workers happier and more satisfied with their work lives. So let's take a couple examples. So say we're selecting employees. We think job applicants who have a higher GPA coming out of college will make better employees. So the IO psychologist goes about testing this. How do we know that higher GPA will lead to better performance? We can look at current employees and see if their college GPA correlates to performance currently, or we can look at other outcomes of current work situations such as absenteeism and tardiness. We can also look at applicants. So previously we were looking at current employees. We can also look at applicants to look at what their GPA is and then see if that correlates once they are on the job to job performance. And then once we know this, if we have support for our idea that greater GPA, improved grades, is related to job performance, then we can try to encourage people to apply this concept that hiring managers should look at GPA. Now, if we didn't find this relationship, and especially if many people look for and don't find this relationship, then it also might be important to not encourage the use of this particular selection tool. Let's take another example. Motivation within the workplace. Say we find that employees in an organization are not motivated to give good customer service. We want to know why that might be. So we develop a hypothesis. We can do this either through deductive reasoning, using a theory. For example, learning theory. If we have rewards, then it would be encouraging people to give good customer service. So say, for example, we implement an employee reward of the month for good customer service. This might be something that people look towards, want to achieve, and this would give them good reason to provide good customer service. We can also go about this in another way, from inductive reasoning. In doing this, we look at the situation of the organization. What are employees saying? Why are they not giving good customer service? What might be telling us that something is wrong or something is, maybe they're getting rewarded for not giving good customer service. It takes time and they're on a time crunch. So if they don't give it, they're not punished. So therefore, they don't give it, they have that extra time for other tasks that they need to do. So this is just an example of using inductive reasoning, finding out what's going on within the organization. But then what we need to do is put it to the test. We need to take our hypothesis, design a study, gather data, and see if that hypothesis is supported or not. Once we have information, if it is supported, we can use that. If it's not supported, we need to go back and search for another hypothesis and continue that process until we figure out what is really going on and how can we make a change. And then once we know what's going on, we can encourage those changes in the organization. So some things that the scientist practitioner does not do. They do not depend upon faith for what works and what doesn't. They don't make assumptions about things that may or may not be true. And they don't take value judgments as facts. What the scientist practitioner does do is ask for evidence. Assumption that employees are not giving good customer service for a certain reason. But let's ask for evidence of that argument. Why? Why are things happening? Why is there a relationship between one factor and another? Let's test ideas in empirical ways. So the scientist practitioner tests ideas and critiques the research designs and assessments that are used not only by others, but by themselves. Let's talk about work. What does this word mean? It means different things to different people. For now in this class, what we're going to do is we're going to look at work in the traditional sense of getting paid to fulfill a particular role. Other ways that people might look at work include volunteer activities. If you have a regular volunteer duty, that could be looked at as a work situation. There are many nonprofits that have volunteers that help run the organization. The issues that we're going to talk about in industrial organizational psychology apply in many respects to these situations of volunteer workers. However, there might be some aspects where what we've learned from employment work is going to be slightly different. So what is work? Our first extra credit discussion for the semester is going to revolve around this idea. What does the concept of work mean to you? Do you have to expend energy? So there are some jobs in which people may sit around and they don't actually do much except for monitor the situation. And if something comes up, then they have to respond to that. but much of their time is spent in a more relaxed, non-activity situation? Do you have to have a product to have worked? Do you have to have something that you created? So someone who builds furniture has furniture, material objects that come out of their work. But many jobs do not have such a product. Is it a requirement to consider something work? Does it include only things you are paid for? Or does it also include unpaid activities, such as the regular volunteer activities I discussed? So let's take some scenarios. Scenario 1, Abby is hired to sit at the front desk of a college dorm. She has the responsibility to monitor people coming in and out of the dorm, to answer the phone, answer questions, respond to activities in the dorm that may cause harm. If there's a fire alarm, she is responsible for making sure that people get out of the building. So, would you consider this situation work? Scenario 2, Brad is a farmer. He spends each day caring for animals, preparing ground, planting, harvesting, getting crops and animals prepared for sale. Money comes from the person who purchases food from him. However, some weeks Brad can't get to the farmer's market and doesn't have a regular, sustained clientele to purchase his products. Therefore, he does not bring in money. If he's not bringing in money, is this then considered work? Scenario 3. Krissa is a small business owner of a landscaping business. She spends time in marketing and connecting with potential customers, caring for lawns, and billing customers. She has not made enough money to cover the cost of equipment and basic living expenses, so she has taken out small business loans to cover these costs. So in effect, Krissa at this point has not actually brought in money. So would her work in her landscaping business be considered work? Scenario 4. Darius is an artist. He spends time creating art and selling the art at craft sales and online. Although he has made sales, he has not covered the total cost of creating the art, not to mention getting paid for time spent creating it. In other words, he has lost money, just as Krissa has. Is there a difference between their activities? Should all these people be considered working in what they do? If you're not hired by someone else and paid by someone else, does that make a difference? If you are not doing physical activity, such as Abby most of the time, she's sitting, is that work? I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about this issue, about this concept of what work is. I'm going to leave you in this moment with a quote that's something we can think about even more later, especially when we talk about job attitudes. In order that people may be happy in their work, these 3 things are needed. They must be fit for it, they must not do too much of it, and they must have a sense of success in it.